I rise speak in support of my Amendment 2B, my capacity as a member of the Joint Committee on Human Rights, which is currently undertaking an inquiry on forced labour in UK supply chains. This amendment gives a mechanism to the amendment tabled and passed in the Lords from our chair, Lord Alton of Liverpool. The Lords Amendment seeks to prevent the Secretary of State providing financial assistance to any company designated Great British Energy where there's credible evidence of modern slavery in their supply chain. My amendment today takes into account some of the arguments made by the government in the Lords, seeking to refine the Lords Amendment, providing a mechanism for determining credible evidence. My amendment therefore empowers independent anti-slavery commissioner to define what constitutes credible evidence of supply chain slavery. This is crafted to allow the bill to be as business-friendly as possible while ensuring it still has teeth. And the Commissioner is backing this initiative. I'd like to begin by welcoming GB Energy Bill and GB Energy. I support the creation of GB Energy, the government's commitment to achieving our net zero ambitions and clean power by 2030. But we must have the highest ethical standards for our solar industry. The British public doesn't want our net zero future built on slave labour. Unison, its report on sourcing solar energy without Uyghur forced labour, states all polysilicon manufacturers in the Uyghur region are participating in forced labour transfer programmes and or supplied by raw material manufacturers that have. Multiple UK public sector bodies have been found to procure solar materials from companies sourcing polysilicon from the region. As the UK's solar capacity sets to double in the future, the concerns amount that Council and other public service bodies will get locked into long-term contracts with unethical suppliers. We need to ensure that our solar supply chain is free of Uyghur slave labour. A report by the China Strategic Risk Institute estimates that if Beijing were to restrict solar exports, it would cost the UK economy £4.4 billion, raising house energy bills by £155 and stall our path to net zero, leave our ability to meet climate goals and protect British consumers at the mercy of decisions made in China. We just need to look at the current raising tariffs around the world, including on China, to understand the risks that are there if we rely solely on China for polysilicons and solar panels. If GB Energy became reliant solely on those solar panels in China, we are not just complicit in human rights abuses, we create an enormous point of strategic vulnerability in our energy system. Give the Chinese state a lever of influence over our critical infrastructure, it would undermine our sovereignty. In the words of Professor Laura Murphy, who's been the Senior Policy Advisor of the United States Department of Homeland Security on the Uyghur forced labour action until January this year, perhaps the world's leading expert on Xinjiang supply chains, she said, from a human rights and climate perspective, the alternative of basing our green energy on Xinjiang coal's high carbon emissions and on the forced labour of oppressed communities is a higher and longer term price to pay. And what are British workers? If we allow GB Energy to contract companies that profit from modern slavery, we are directly undermining fair competition. No British worker can compete with a system that relies on forced labour. In our manifesto, we pledge secure, well-paid green jobs. This amendment seeks to ensure that British workers are not undercut by Chinese renewable companies that profit from modern slavery, and that GB Energy promotes not only the development of the UK's renewable sector, but improved human rights for all workers at each stage of the supply chain. It is also true that the United States legislation has nudged companies to diversify their supply chains, and that there is a gradual move away from suppliers using forced labour in the United States. Under the provisions of the Uyghur Forced Labour Prevention Act, a number of companies have been sanctioned for using forced labour. The Solar Task Force, while a welcome step, is not empowered to assess modern slavery risks in procurement, nor is it equipped with the anti-slavery expertise necessary to mitigate those risks. I know the task force work has come to conclusion, so I'd just like to ask the Minister to outline the steps that will follow the work of the task force to ensure a solid mechanism that excludes forced labour products in the solar supply chain. As my honourable friend the Minister has stated in the past, no UK company should have forced labour in its supply chains, and the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero has reaffirmed that position. The Secretary of State for Business and Trade gave an absolute assurance that no modern slavery would be permitted in supply chains affecting UK goods. This amendment simply ensures those commitments are enforced in practice. Sadly, the current statutory provisions have not been sufficient to prevent slave-made renewables entering the UK, so more must be done, and this amendment is a modest and business-friendly way to incentivise cleaner supply chains. This bill presents an opportunity to use the purchasing power of the government to nudge business in the right direction. This week marks 10 years since the Modern Slavery Act became law. Once a leader in the fight against modern slavery are now in danger of falling behind after legislation in the US, as I've outlined, and now in the EU. This amendment presents a credible mechanism to assure a clean energy future. This is just one way, as the Minister outlined, of ensuring that we can remove forced labour from our supply chains. The Minister raised the prospect of using the Procurement Act 2023, and I welcome what he said. The Act at the moment requires suppliers to be convicted under the Modern Slavery Act or an offence in their own country. The nature of forced labour and supply chains in China means that it's disguised, and currently those conditions would not be met. I'd like to ask if the Minister, in the very welcome cross-departmental working group that he's announced in his open statements, will be looking at the Procurement Act and ensuring the Procurement Act is fit for purpose, and looking at the way the United States has utilised a rebuttal presumption for goods from Xinjiang or another similar mechanism. Will the Minister, as a matter of urgency, with his cross-departmental working group, ensure that we have the powers and expertise to prevent forced labour in our solar supply chains? And will he work with the trade unions, NGOs and the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner on this? Will the Minister meet with me and Professor Laura Murphy, as she's now working at Sheffield Hallam University, on this issue, as a matter of urgency, to explore the detail of how to ensure a robust system, as she helped implement in the United States, and work with me on ensuring a robust system not just for GB Energy but our whole solar industry? I absolutely agree with the Minister, this is not just an issue for GB Energy but our whole solar industry. Will the Minister work with me to get a workable debarment list to ensure that GB Energy is acting on modern slavery, and a commitment that GB Energy's operating framework is committed to tackling forced labour? If I get these reassurances from the Minister, I am happy to withdraw my amendment and work with the Government and the Government's Departmental Cross-Working Group and others to ensure that we can take the scandal of forced labour out of our solar supply chains. Thank you.
Yeah.